Today is Veterans Day, and there are many to honor. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, there are more than 21 million veterans in the U.S. Florida has the third largest veteran population with more than 1.6 million. That's 12% of the adult population. We also have the largest population of disabled veterans with just under 250,000. But are they getting the care they deserve? And joining us for more on our roundtable tonight is Sarasota Veteran Service Officer Stephen Garcia, Director of Veteran Services for the Goodwill of Minnesota, C.J. Bannister, Public Affairs Officer for Bay Pines Veterans Administration, Jason Dangle, and Veterans Benefits Consultant, Jerry Zivic. And gentlemen, why don't we start with you, because you are handling the vets that are applying for veterans benefits and for who are trying to seek them. There's been so much talk in the last several years about the shortcomings of the VA at facilities elsewhere. Jason, have you seen an improvement over the news stories that have been out there over the last couple of years?
Well, Alan, I'm glad you asked that question. Over the last several years, the Bay Pines VA healthcare system has been making enormous strides, specifically in the areas of access. And when I talk about access, that's providing timely, accessible care to the veterans we serve. Just this year alone, we have activated new services for same-day audiology care, primary care. By the end of the year, we'll have same-day mental health care. And this is for non-urgent concerns. Of course, if a veteran has an emergency situation, they can always visit the closest emergency room or pursue urgent care.
One of the hang-ups, or a number of the hang-ups, have been, I remember a report from, I believe, the IG a couple of months ago in terms of some of the files out of state and elsewhere, and there was some criticism of how they were stored. What's been the VA's reaction to that since?
Well, you know, I work for the Veterans Health Administration, and when you're talking about files, paper files, we don't maintain paper files. We've had an electronic medical record in some form since the 80s. So I believe that's probably a report related to the Veterans Benefits Administration.
What about wait times? That has been the focus of so much of attention.
Well, I think the narrative has changed a lot. I think, you know, in VA today, we're talking about transformation. We're talking about improvements. Just in 2016, fiscal year 2016, the Bay Pines VA healthcare system completed 1.5 million appointments. 98% of those appointments were completed within 30 days of the veteran's clinically indicated date. And just for some clarification, clinically indicated date is the date that your doctor says, hey, Alan, we want to see you back to the clinic. So, you know, absolutely, we're making great progress there. Served over 108,000 veterans. And like I said, adding services, expanding services, and providing more options for care.
Jerry, you help so many veterans in our area get the benefits that they deserve. Are you seeing an improvement?
Well, I think a lot of times we focus on the negativity of the VA. And as Jason says, they do a lot of really good work. And before I go any further, I do want to thank all of you for the service you've given
Absolutely.
to our country, the sacrifices your families have made. And I feel honored to be able to sit here with you three tonight. So there has been a lot of progress. There's always progress to make. If one veteran, I think we all can agree with that, if one veteran's not getting the benefits that he or she deserves, there's something wrong.
You have talked in the past about some of the programs out there just to move the benefits and the application process along more efficiently. You talked about even Social Security and how it's trying new systems in order to help veterans in particular get the benefits.
Actually, it was interesting. Jason talked about the electronic records. Just this week, Social Security announced a new program where they have now access to the VA's electronic medical records. So if you're a veteran and you're applying for disability, Social Security disability, they now can access your records from the VA, and that should speed the process dramatically with Social Security for the vet.
And see, we've had you on this broadcast before talking about programs that work and don't work. There was a program that we talked about a couple of months ago, which you found was just complicated and time-consuming in terms of veterans getting the help. Has that improved since?
In the past few months, and I believe you're talking about the Veterans Choice Program. With the Veterans Choice Program, they have expanded many of their eligibility requirements to allow more veterans to be seen sooner. And I hear that they may end Veterans Choice Program, but invest that money elsewhere in the non-VA coordinated care.
And I could speak a little bit more about the choice program specifically. When the choice program was initiated a few years ago, it provided more options for veterans to receive care in the community, and that's through a third-party administrator, if you will.
Right.
So if we didn't have capacity, or there was too long of a wait, for example, the veteran could opt into the program. Obviously, there had been some challenges. We're well aware of that across the country, not only in our healthcare system but elsewhere. So they've been making improvement efforts throughout, since the program launched, and they're working towards what we call provider agreements, which is more the traditional structure of what was provided previously. We've always provided non-VA care options or community care options to veterans, but now they're streamlining the Veterans Choice Program through these provider agreements. It's direct relationship between the VA and the community providers, and giving them a more streamlined approach to that program.
And I want to talk in our next segment more about what's to come, because we're still having so many veterans leave the service after Iraq and Afghanistan, and I don't know if the full deluge of new veterans is hit the system yet. So I want to talk about that. But CJ, you work with veterans who in many ways are the most vulnerable. And what is the biggest challenge that they are facing right now?
Well, their biggest challenge typically is employment. And it's filling the gap, which we try to help do that. Even for me, when I got out, you immediately start losing, you lose your paycheck that you're used to for 8 years.
When was that?
In March of 2001. So for me, it's very near and dear to my heart because it was a struggle for me when I got out. I served for 8 years. And when I got out, I thought I had a fancy resume that would do well in the community.
And it didn't translate.
It didn't translate well at all. And so a lot of the veterans that show up, their resumes typically have a lot of codes in them that the civilian world probably doesn't understand. So we put them through additional classes and help rewrite their resume. We also help fill gaps where if a veteran walks through our door and they haven't found a job and it's been 3 months and they've got a family at home, and I had a Marine tell me his power was going to get shut off the next day, and so we were able to step in and fill that gap and help him with that, and then help him find employment. Okay,
I'm going to ask you in our next segment what more can be done for veterans who are in that position. But we have to take a break right now, and we'll be back with our roundtable. When we return, we'll share with you the stories of 2 veterans from the greatest generation here on the Suncoast. Welcome back, and if you're just joining us, it is Veterans Day, and we are discussing how we can serve our men and women in uniform even better than we are. Our guests tonight include Sarasota Veteran Services Officer Stephen Garcia, Director of Veteran Services for Goodwill, Minnesota, CJ Bannister, Public Affairs Officer for Bay Pines VA Health System, Jason Dangle, and Veterans Benefits Consultant Jerry Zivick. And let's start with where Kate's story left off, and that is the greatest generation. My dad was a member of one of it. They are leaving us at an increasing speed every single day. And Jason, among the patients that go to Bay Pines, how many are left, and how quickly is that diminishing?
Well, the Bay Pines VA healthcare system serves the largest number of World War II veterans for any VA healthcare system in the country. I believe that number is a little over 7,000. Back in 2012, just to give you an idea of how the population has changed, that number was over 12,000. So obviously this group of veterans, the greatest generation, is getting smaller. Many of them are in their 90s. In fact, had the opportunity to talk to a great World War II veteran who actually volunteers for our healthcare system every single day of the week, 96 years old. Second wave on the beach in Normandy, Battle of the Bulge, and provided 34,000 volunteer hours giving back to veterans, and still does today. So
what is the challenge dealing with patients from the World War II or even Korea and Vietnam eras, as opposed to the younger vets from Iraq, Afghanistan, and our current conflicts?
That's a really good question, Alan. Obviously different generations of patients or veterans like to receive their care different ways. Their preferences are different. Obviously World War II veterans like the more traditional settings, the traditional means of communication, letters, telephone calls, things like that. While the newer generation, they're more in tune to electronic communications, emails, utilizing the My Healthy Vet system, which is a system that we can securely communicate information back and forth with patients. So, you know, it's based on communication. It's based on preferences. But across the generations, you'll see differences.
Jerry, in my experience, and I've done these stories in our area for a lot of years now, one of the problems with elderly veterans is applying for VA benefits and being taken advantage of by certain companies that had been out there that you know, claim that they can help you get benefits, but they're not registered with the VA. I know there's been some legislation both locally on the federal level to try to tie that up, but is it still out there?
There's always people trying to take advantage of veterans. The Justice Department, actually, on the federal level, has a huge task force. They're going after mortgage people, they're going after credit card companies, and each local district attorney has to have an assistant assigned to veterans issues. So they're very much aware of this issue.
That says a lot.
Yeah, it is.
And CJ and Stephen, you still are dealing with people, veterans from the greatest generation, and you have a smile on your face right now because I'm taking that you know people who really light up your heart.
For sure. The first thing that comes to mind is the last one that we were able to help. We received a frantic phone call from a World War II vet's son in Colorado who called us and said, "We were sent to you by Congressman Buchanan's office because I can't get a hold of my father. Can you send someone to his home to make sure he's okay?" And so we went there and he was totally fine. He just had knocked his phone off of the jack, and so it wasn't working for him. So we were able to actually go get a donated computer, and we set him up with Skype. So he now Skypes with his son in Colorado, and they're able to stay in contact.
That's incredible. And Stephen, are you also dealing with members of the older generation?
Absolutely. What our office does is when we were able to make home visits with these veterans at our, say if they're at assisted living facilities, nursing homes, at their homes, we're able to assist them coordinating their care with the VA, their health care with their VA. We can also help with the non-service connected wartime pension for veterans and their widows of wartime veterans that can pay up to $2,120 a month tax-free benefit to help them with their care. And so our job as veteran service officers for Sarasota, Manatee, and Charlotte counties is to go into their home or meet with them and make sure they're utilizing all their VA benefits to the highest potential, because that is just preparing them the greatest quality of life.
Let me ask all of you this now, and this is a sensitive subject, but we have more and more men and women who are leaving the military as they end their service after, you know, Afghanistan and Iraq. The system is being deluged. Over the last 8 years, the VA has gotten a lot more funding, but it's never enough. And you know, my experience is that a lot of members of Congress talk a good game, but they don't always appropriate a good game. And you know, how much? And because on the flip side, some people will say money does not necessarily solve the problems, and you know, organizationally there are reforms that have to be made. Is money a problem in terms of VA right now, or is it more of an organizational thing? And I know I see Stephen, you're on the jump.
Well, Alan, this is one that hits home with me because I got out of the Marine Corps March 2013, and I think conversations like what we're having here, right here, is very much needed. Not because we need to get out there to the veterans and their families. They don't know how to access their benefits that they're eligible for. They don't know who to go to. Currently, if you're in the process of getting out of the military, they have a SEPs and TAPs, a separation type of class that goes on for a week. But when they come home, they don't know where to go. And whenever, I mean, last week I just worked with a vet that just got out a few weeks ago. And when I sat there with him, I was able to get him in contact with people like CJ, with Jason at the VA, get them enrolled in their VA health care, process their VA disability compensation claim. and pretty much network with our community. And that's one huge, huge thing that needs to happen.
Yeah, and Stephen, I'm glad you brought that up because, you know, it really does take a community. I think a lot of times people will point a finger at one organization or another, talk about money, talk about resources, but the bottom line is, you know, working together like we're doing today is really a huge answer and a huge step in the right direction. So I just wanted to make that point.
Let me, you know, this is a hot potato that I'm going to bring up, but you know that there have been suggestions in Washington by some members of Congress and some folks who ran for office to privatize the VA. Jerry, do you have a...
Well, actually, we might have a real unique opportunity now. Every politician, as we all know, talks about let's give our veterans the very best. And I don't think there's anybody anywhere that disputes that. But now we have a situation where we have one party basically in control of the executive branch, in control of the Congress. So maybe we can eliminate some of the normal political infighting and all row in the same direction to accomplish some systems changes and use our money wisely.
All right. We'll see what happens.
We will.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. We're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we'll have final thoughts from our guests, plus comments from our viewers on traffic concerns here on the Centerist. Have you taken time today to honor a veteran? We welcome back our guests now for final thoughts on this very important day. And Stephen, we'll start with you because it occurs to us that there are a lot of veterans who may be watching this right now who need help in some way and don't know how to make that first call.
Well, just so you know, over $210 million worth of VA benefits, albeit health care, education, housing, VA disability compensation, or pensions, are utilized in Sarasota County. That's what we bring into our county. Our office, we can sit with them for at least an hour of free consult. Everything we do at Sarasota County is free, veteran services. They can come in, we can get them enrolled, see what they're eligible for to make sure that they and their families utilize their VA benefits totally.
If they were going to Google that right now, what should they put in?
Sarasota County Veteran Services, or they can email us at veterans@scgov.net.
And CJ, what do you think are the biggest challenges that the veterans that you deal with are facing right now?
Absolutely, education. And if you're a veteran out there looking for assistance with your resume, we do classes every Tuesday at 1 o'clock. The VA comes in the first Tuesday of the month and teaches how to do federal applications. We do a job skills interview class the second Tuesday. The third Tuesday we do resumes, and the fourth we do mock interviews where we bring in employers and career source representatives to come in and help them. So Tuesdays, every Tuesday at 1 o'clock, if you're looking for employment, we're here to help.
And Jason, do you think that most veterans out there know that the VA is accessible, and nobody's ever quibbled with the quality of the health care there, but you know, do you find that this is such a huge area, the Tampa Bay area, that most veterans know that they could go to the Bay Pines or call their local office and get help and services they need?
Well, I think, you know, education and kind of what CJ alluded to, ensuring that they understand what they're eligible for, providing those contacts, providing those resources is very, very important, and it's a huge part of our mission. And not all veterans know what they're eligible for, but that's why it is our job to reach out to them, provide those resources, partner with our community partners.
And Jerry, in terms of helping veterans navigate the system, what should people know?
Well, I'd like to point out what I would consider a practice pointer. If you're dealing with any government agency, you should always tell them that you're a veteran. I think you'll, with Social Security, they'll certainly give you a preference. And that's the biggest interface, I think, for most of us in society. So if you're seeking a Social Security benefit, you should call up and say, "Hi, this is Joe Smith, I'm a veteran," because that'll trigger a couple different things. I'd also like to say that this is our 97th Veterans Day. And I think that we owe such a debt to all of our veterans for all they've done. Our country is great because
Absolutely.
of it.
And I want to thank the both of you for serving our country.
Thank you.
Before we go, we want to share with you what some of our viewers are saying about last night's story. As part of our Suncoast 2037 series, we looked into how infrastructure and technology will change over the next 20 years to meet the rapidly growing population in the area. Experts say we could expect to see more roundabouts and alternatives to vehicles. Stephen is shaking his head, including more public transportation and even water taxis. But here is what some of you are saying. Diane Costello writes, so the experts say that the roundabouts will help. I disagree 100% because obviously they do not ride on the highway where the roundabouts are located. People do not seem to know what to do. They never stop for other cars. Leonard LaFlamme writes, they are leading us from behind on this one at a time. And Diana Bianchi writes, how about a moratorium in place for the counties so they could have the proper time to assess the reality of this mess? Well, if you'd like to join the conversation about tonight's topic, just visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/news@7. And want to watch past Roundtable discussions? They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. Thank you to our guests for being here tonight. Stephen Garcia is a Sarasota County Veteran Services Officer. CJ Bannister is Director of Veteran Services for Goodwill, Minnesota. And Jason Dangle is Public Affairs Officer for the Bay Pines VA Healthcare System. And Jerry Zivick is a Veterans Benefits Consultant.